Welcome to the annual Newbigin public lecture. This is our third Newbigin public lecture, and tonight we also have a special launch of Seedbeds, this organisation where it's our dream really to grow leaders and communities into fullness of life. We've got a few speakers. I'll be heading it off with around the theme of Seedbeds of Hope, and then we'll have John Newbigin, who's Leslie's son, who's the lecturer is named after. And John is a creative genius, really. He's helped shape the creative industry here in the UK with Creative England. He's an OBE, and what he has to say about creativity and hope is just so inspiring. We have Dr. Sally Mann, who's a sociologist and a lecturer at Greenwich University, but also an embedded Baptist minister in the East End of London. She'll be responding with her thoughts. And then Bishop Mike Royal, who leads Cinnamon Network. He's a brilliant man, a Pentecostal bishop, and also one of my drinking partners at the Black Eagle here in Winson Green. We're based at the Greenhouse at Barnes Close, which is, we're basically been renewing this old retreat and conference centre and making it usable and able to be used by local communities in Winson Green and East London and all kinds of communities that often never get access to beautiful places and able to be renewed. So this is our kind of first event, public event there, and I really hope that you enjoy it and are inspired and informed by what you hear. Thank you for watching.
Yeah, excellent. So everyone grab a seat who needs a seat. let me start with my little 5-10 minutes worth. Change doesn't happen by chance. It shoots up out of the dirt of relentless intentionality with fresh sprinklings of hope. One of the challenges in our neighbourhoods is that hope and dreams get squashed out of people before they've even had a chance to live. We have amazing talent in places like Winson Green and Bonnie Downs, but so often folks don't get the opportunities to express those talents. In fact, people's dreams often get kicked out of them before they've even a chance to think about them. People too often are in survival mode and get stuck in that how to survive the day. Hope is a commodity in short supply sometimes. Actually, when Leslie was in Winson Green, he said that there was a kind of famine of hope in Winson Green. And, it's poverty and injustice is not just about cash. It's about hope. It's about believing that something more is possible, that the potential that we can see for something good can happen in our lives. Some of the best definitions of hope that I know of come from very ancient traditions. I think in the modern world, so often we're looking for the brightest and the quickest and the sharpest to get over. But for me, these words from the Book of Lamentations are important. It's a book that was written in the midst of agony and pain, but it finds a new key. But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul that seeks him. Finding hope in the slum community in Bangkok, where we lived for 12 years, was incredibly difficult. Whether it be fires or floods or young people dying of AIDS or premature death for all kinds of reasons, it just was difficult to find that kind of hope, that kind of optimism. In Winson Green at times, many of my friends here, just some of the things they've faced in their lives, some of the obstacles they've overcome. I mean, they shouldn't have to have had to experience that in their lives. And yet they keep standing, keep getting up. And I think when we think about this idea of hope, there is a kind of waiting, there is a kind of lament, there is a kind of birthing within us that something different is possible. seen the way even a little bit of hope can light a way forward. The change can happen whenever hope rises within us. I don't mean to say everything is possible if we wish hard enough. That's kind of delusional. But just even the smallest sign of hope can alter a person's trajectory. Once hope gains momentum in a person or place, it can be unstoppable. To put it another way, change doesn't happen without hope. So what do I mean by hope? The story of Rahab in Joshua is an amazing story. Here is a woman who's incredible desperation. She's a sex worker. She's the town she's living in is being attacked by an outside force. The walls are literally kind of coming down around her, and yet, rather than the instinct to fear or futility or frustration, which must have been so strong, because she had nothing to lose, Rahab acted in hope. She took the spies in from the Hebrew spies. She hid them in her roof, and then she lied to the king about where they went. She sided with the incoming revolution because she saw and heard how God had freed the Hebrews from oppression in Egypt. Rahab then made a deal with the spies for her family. Now then, she said, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, that you will save us from death. Our lives for your lives, the men assured her. If you don't tell what we are doing, we will treat you kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us the land. Rahab helped the spies escape, and the sure sign they came up with was one of the biblical words for hope. The word tikwa is one of 15 Hebrew words that can be translated hope. The psalmist, for example, describes God as a hope, a tikwa, of the poor in Psalm 9. However, this word can also be literally translated cord or rope, and this needs to be done twice in this context to make sense of Rahab's story. Rahab helps the spies escape down red ropes and then uses these ropes as the sign for her house to be saved. And that happens. The word for rope is tikwa, and it's this idea, this metaphor of bringing into the present the good future that God has for us. It isn't just wishful thinking. It isn't just hoping for the best out there. It's being proactive like Rahab was. It's taking initiative. It's believing that something better is possible. And I've seen that in so many lives I look around the room. Change makers, master students, folks who've been willing to take the risk of putting themselves out there, owning their own story with all its mess, but using that as fuel for change, fuel for hope. I love it. I love being able to see that. The other theme tonight is the idea of the seedbed of hope. I first heard that idea from Dr. John Perkins, who's a civil rights leader, who was a contemporary of Dr. King. And I met him in person in Kuala Lumpur in 2014. We were on our way here to England. And Dr. Perkins is an amazing man. He started the Christian Community Development Association. And he was asking, what are you hoping to do in Winson Green in Birmingham? What's your plans? And it was one of those things when you meet one of the heroes of the faith. He's in his 80s. He was speaking at the conference we were leading, and we were just in this food court that's quite noisy and crazy in Kuala Lumpur. And he said, what is it you want to do? What is it you're hoping to see happen? And I said, John, I'm in my second half of my life now. I really want to invest in a new generation of urban leaders who can go further than us, leaders who can grasp the potential of people in inner city, people on the front line who don't have to move, but they see and they know the situations and they can bring about change. But this kind of change, you have to live it. You have to catch it. It's caught more than taught. It's by sharing lives together that we see that kind of transformation happen. And some of these folks will work and live with us in Winson Green. Some will go further, will support other people. And I just kind of really shared my heart of what I wanted to see happen. Then John said, what you're trying to do is a seedbed. You're going to help people grow deep roots. You're going to help people see fruit happen that wouldn't happen. You're going to nurture the soil so that people's lives can be changed. You're going to grow seedbeds. So when it came to lots of things happening in Winson Green, and I don't want to take too much longer on this, but it has been a wild ride since 2014. None of our plans survived impact. And in 2015, when Newbigin House was kind of opened, it was a crazy kind of moment for us in lots of ways. Finally, we're getting into the place that we'd talked about in 2014, and actually over the last few years, it really has expanded with all kinds of local people coming together to solve their own problems together. More than that too, the area of leadership development started to happen too. Our connections with Bonnie Downs and Royal Docks and friends in Manchester and Scotland and in the Ukraine and in Bangkok, and those kind of hopes for change, that people could come and learn and grow and then be redeveloped in other places, started to happen as well. So much so that both these areas grew, and it was getting confusing for people. What is this Newbigin thing? You know, is it Winson Green? Is it leadership? Is it a house? Is it, and so we really felt we needed to, with the expanded work, give it a new name and a fresh sense of hope. And the name we went back to was Seedbeds, growing leaders and communities into fullness of life. Do we want to see School for Urban Leadership become like that for urban leaders around the world? Our connections, obviously, with Nazarenes have been so wonderful over the years, and just to see it keep growing and new pathways are emerging with community development, and I just feel, just so privileged to be able to see. And some of our students are here today. Give us a shout if you, or they are out sorting with, I think they're all out. Lots of the students are out sorting there, but maybe we've got a few here, I think. Cherry I saw, and Greg's out there. But also our Changemakers programs, which, any Changemakers here? Got a few? Yeah, excellent. There's Jay at the back. Okay, excellent. And we really want to see those programs expand. And one of the reasons we have the greenhouse is so that we can help people from the front line who are doing this stuff, who have lived experience of all the issues, can be empowered to grow and develop and see change happen, that they indeed become signs of hope. And it's a privilege to be able to get to do that. I'm thrilled that Dave Mann is able to help us help local seedbeds, local communities grow in this way as well, and that while we've got 4 local seedbeds, 2 in Birmingham, 2 in London, we'd like to see more happen that can support local leadership development and responses to God's dream for the neighbourhood. We also have global kind of connections. Just this week I've been on the call to Burma. People may know Myanmar's in huge trouble at the moment with a military dictatorship that did a coup d'etat in February, and with 60 ministers died in the last week actually because of COVID just in churches this week. And so we're standing with our Burmese friends. We've got connections with the Ukraine, with the master's program there, with the main theological seminary in the country, and we're supporting their master's programs there. We've got hopes for Changemakers in Australia and South Africa, and so this global kind of hope, as well as running immersion programs. Ange will take a group in February, hopefully, to Bangkok again to learn from local people and to see the change that's possible from within a slum community like Klontoi. And lastly, we're doing a bit more of things we used to do, of speaking and publishing. Ange's book is due out in September with the provocative title, Missionary, Not Just a Position. So we're hoping no other publisher would do it. So, so that would be great. You'll see some pamphlets and things at the back if you want to know more information about this. But we're really excited about the future, and really grateful that you could be here on this day to help celebrate the launch of a new phase in our lives. And so thank you for standing with us. So many of you have been so wonderful. So bless you guys. Thank you. I'm going to hand over to John now.
Thank you, Ash. When you started, you talked about talent and opportunity. When I started an organisation 10 years ago called Creative England, and our mantra was talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. And I really think everything that kind of we've been doing in the last 10 years demonstrates that to be true. Actually, a lot of it is about opportunity. And I want to talk about, I asked Ash, what's the theme for tonight? And he said, well, I'm going to talk about hope, but I'd like you to talk about creativity. So I've been thinking a little bit about some of the connections between hope and creativity. But before that, I should say, my dad, as Ash said, was a pastor of a little church in Winson Green. And when he'd retired, he'd already retired, and he was writing a lot. He was a theologian who enjoyed sitting at his desk and writing, but he also really wanted to be working with the congregation. And he found working with the little community in Winson Green incredibly powerful. Although he said that part of Birmingham was called Mary Hill, and he said when he first started working there, strangely everybody calls it Merry Hell, which he thought was a much more accurate description of it. It may still be like that. But one thing I would say is he would absolutely have loved this place, because he enjoyed walking in the Lickey Hills and the Clent Hills, and any opportunity that he and my mum got to come out and walk in this countryside around here, they took. So what a fantastic place you've got here. It's absolutely brilliant. So Ash said hope, creativity, and I was thinking, if you think about hope, there's various kind of gradations of hope, aren't there? And I was thinking, if you're standing at a bus stop and you say, I hope the bus comes, you actually have no idea if the bus company's gone out of business or they've changed the schedule. If you say, I believe the bus will come, you say that on the basis of past experience. When the bus comes round the corner, you say, I know the bus is coming and I have confidence in the bus. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was, what's the relationship between hope, confidence, and creativity? And then there's another kind of link, which is, I think that creativity, which is something that we all want to believe in and all want to commit ourselves to, and confidence are both very dependent on community. And Ash, you referenced, one thing that drives me mad about a lot of Hollywood films is the general theme is, if you believe, you can make anything happen. And a lot of people operate on the basis that if they believe hard enough in themselves, they can make anything happen. Well, for some people that is true, but the reality of the world is that very often doesn't happen like that, and people feel absolutely smashed. So individual, making it happen entirely on your own is something that most people cannot do. So that kind of confidence, of which hope is a crucial part, from my way of thinking, absolutely comes out of community. The two things are inextricably bound together. And we like doing things together. I mean, you think at the moment about football. You don't want to watch the football game on your own. You want to watch it with other people, partly because even if you have some doubt about whether England's going to win, if you're with 100 other people who say, yeah, you believe, you have confidence, that's all part of kind of being part of a community, it seems to me. But there are other things, more profound issues about why community works and why community and creativity, to my way of thinking, absolutely go together. When we were doing early work on the creative industries in the UK about 20 years ago, the government produced a report sort of underpinning some of the arguments behind thinking about the creative industries as a new sector. And one of the arguments that came out of this piece of academic work was diversity is more important than ability. Okay? Diversity is more important than ability. And by that they meant you can have 10 nuclear scientists together in a room, but they may all be thinking exactly the same. They may not come up with the kind of solution that will come up if they are working with a variety of different people. Diversity can be more important than ability. We know that that's true in our societies, and As you talked about seedbed, we know that that's true in the environment as well. Biodiversity. Biodiversity is the key to creative growth in the natural environment. Diversity in our communities is key to the growth of creativity in our communities. So I love this phrase, diversity is more important than ability. And in a society where we think so much about academic excellence, having qualifications, actually it's other qualities that very often build creativity, which is why talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. And then another report we did about the creative industries a little while later was based on about 400 little digital media businesses around Brighton. And we were looking at where the businesses that were driven by the techies, if you like, the kind of digital nerds, the businesses that were run by the creatives, the artists, and the businesses that were run by the accountants who were focusing on the bottom line. What a surprise. What we discovered was that the companies where the accountants, the techies, and the lovies, if I could put them like that, all treated each other with equal esteem were the companies that were growing fastest. If you have the techies in charge, you wind up with something that nobody and no customer wants to buy. If the lovies are in charge, you wind up with something that doesn't work. And if the accountants are in charge, you wind up with misery. So you put those three together and then you have something that works. Diversity and ability go together. And then there's another dimension to this as well, and that is that community is not just about support. Community is about a mixture of people who can lift us up and people who can run a shower of cold water over us when we need it. So I often think of Billy Wilder, great American film director. One of his little mantras was, when an actor comes through a door, you got nothing. But when an actor comes through a window, you got a situation. And if you think of one of his great films, Some Like It Hot, it is literally true that the actors in that film half the time are coming through the windows. But his point was, you've got to occasionally take a leap. You've got to do something that really takes a risk. And a little story I will tell you from the beginning of Creative England. Some of you may know about this. When we started Creative England, one of the projects we backed was a film that we made in Handsworth, or between Handsworth and Aston. There were two gangs, the Johnsons and the Burger Boys, who were busily killing each other. And with Penny Woolcock, we made a little film about the two gangs and the two gang leaders. And again, some of you may know the people involved, but Dylan Doofus, who was one of the leaders, became a kind of rabid social entrepreneur. He started going straight, and my God, the man had energy. But about 6 months after we finished the film, we had a reception in London for Creative England, our Creative England projects. And Vince Cable was then the Minister for Business. And Vince Cable turned up at this reception. And Dylan was talking about the film. And I could see he suddenly clocked the fact that there was a minister in the corner. And he said, I can see there's a minister there. Could I just say something to you, sir? He said, the government's invested hundreds of millions in Handsworth and Aston in the last 10 years. And to my way of thinking, it hasn't changed anything. So these people came, spent £1 million on a film, and it's totally changed the community. That is the power of art. I could have fallen through the floor. I couldn't believe anybody actually said that, but he did. And I think his point is sometimes we assume that we have to approach things in a completely sort of rational, logical way. But sometimes you get the best outcome by doing what's unexpected. Because on the other hand, you also need people who can give you the cold shower. And I came across an organization recently, I thought it was brilliant, called the Institute of the Less Good Idea. The point being, we all have fantastic ideas, but very often they're completely impractical. And sometimes it's the less good idea, which is the one that works. So I think, one of the things about the relationship between community and creativity is not just we get strength from other people, but we get the corrections of reality from other people who can say, that's a lovely dream, but it ain't going to work. Or have you thought about this? Or have you thought about that? So these things, getting these things in balance seems to me important. But the real core message is the way creativity happens and what drives creativity is communities that work together. And in the same way that it does in the natural environment, the biodiversity point applies to human beings just as much. So thinking about the relationship between hope creativity, my little set of connections was this. Confidence, which is part of hope, comes out of community. Community drives creativity. And we certainly need plenty of creativity at the moment. If you think, apart from the inequalities we're dealing with in our society, we've got climate change, we've got youth unemployment, we've got a huge housing crisis, we haven't got much money, people are feeling very depressed, people are feeling very blue. We need to have a big fat measure of creativity. And it only comes out of the community working together. So confidence grows out of community. Community helps drive creativity. And real creativity, that's what drives hope. So thanks.
That was just marvellous, wasn't it? I'm going to speak about one aspect of Seedbeds that's particularly close to my heart, and that is the fact that Seedbeds is focused on local communities. So it's a collective movement, really, but it puts local communities at the heart of what it does. And often marginalised communities. Now, why does this matter? Because Jesus is of Nazareth, not of Sepphoris. Let me explain myself. We're used to the idea that everybody moves around and we live in a very mobile age. But I was shocked by this piece of sociological research, because I'm a sociologist, that in America, on average, people live 18 miles, 1/8, away from their mother. 18 miles, that's it. In fact, the lower your education or income, the closer you live to your mother. So the more educated you are, the further you live from your mother. In fact, 37% of Americans live in their hometown, and they've never lived out of it. 57% of Americans live in their home state. From this piece of sociology, I can surmise that my family are particularly undereducated and poor, because the idea of living 18 miles away from my mum is impossible. I live about 800 yards from my mum, as do 7 other households of my family. In fact, I'm the 4th of 6 generations who've lived on the same 4 streets. Why have I stayed in a local community where people often describe the best thing as the route out of it? Well, because Jesus is of Nazareth, not of Sepphoris. Where was Nazareth? Well, it was nowhere, really. I was shocked to find out there's probably only 200 people lived in Nazareth. I mean, that is literally like 4 streets of London, less than that. 200 people, nowhere. In terms of his socio-economic class, I don't know anything about Greek, but I bow to your better knowledge. We have people here who are doing advanced Greek in their masters. The best word that describes that is that Jesus was an artisan, and I think, oh, that's lovely, like he sat around whittling spoons or something. But actually, the word meant that he was probably part of the gig economy. He was a carpenter, but if you were an artisan, it meant your family had lost their land. So to be an artisan from Nazareth meant you were really quite low down the pecking order. You could see Galilee from the capital city of the region, which was Sepphoris. But who's heard of Sepphoris? Nobody. It was very likely that Jesus worked in the kind of gig economy and could see this town Sepphoris and probably had to walk there to go and do a day's work, building buildings that he couldn't afford to live in, and then walk home to Nazareth, a bit like everybody that lives in East Ham. Goes to work, gets the number 15 bus to work in the town, but can't afford to live in central London and so lives in East Ham. Jesus is from Nazareth. It's not from Sepphoris. Jesus probably noticed that the structures in his community worked against Nazareth. So all the aqueducts took the water into Sepphoris, but the aqueducts never came back the other way. Jesus was from a place that was robbed of resources, just like East Ham. In fact, when Nathaniel asks, in John 1:46, can anything good come from Nazareth? He was kind of giving the sort of jaded attitude that people use about my community today. Poor old East Ham. And Seedbeds is a collective movement that takes places like Nazareth seriously. The Nazareths of the world. I think the church would much prefer Jesus to come from Sepphoris, somewhere important, or Jerusalem, or better still, Rome. Let's create a colonial type religion. Let's be more like Goliath than David, but we all know how that story ends. So every tier of Seedbeds, you can see them on the board behind me, the local, the global, and the communications, all comes out of places like Nazareth. Urban change makers, you have to spend a group from your community. You have to be nominated from a community to come on an Urban Change Makers programme. I love the way Tim Evans described it on the film on YouTube at the moment. We don't bring individuals, he says, because we're not about training individuals. We're about building neighbourhood capacity. On the MA programmes that we run for the Nazarenes, our students do practical theology, where their knowledge comes from places like Nazareth, from working in them, with them. Praxis reflecting on what God is doing in places like Nazareth. So I've marked MA essays about Citizens UK working against knife crime in the East End. I've marked essays, brilliant ones, about girls' clubs in Winson Green and what you can learn about God from them. From my own community, where students have written about work with people with no recourse to public funds. We all know which way the aqueducts run in our communities. So when Nathaniel said, what good can come from a place like Nazareth? The answer is, if you read the Bible, come and see. Come and see. Because the kingdom of God actually isn't something that can be taught to you how to live. It's something you see. It's something you experience in the lives of other people in your community. Come and see. It was Bonhoeffer himself who warned us, didn't he? That if you love the idea of community, you destroy community. But if you love people, you build community. So I very much chime with this idea that's been on Ash's heart and throughout his whole life. I guess if he was a stick of rock, you could cut him down the middle and it would say community. That Seedbeds are about learning and being with not Jesus of Sepphoris, because that's not where he came from, but Jesus of Nazareth and all the places like that. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Sally. Man, that was just amazing. You might be sitting here and just asking the question, how does that apply to me? How does all that I'm hearing apply to me? Because the reality is that people have always looked down on me. People have always said that I'll end up nowhere. People have always said that actually I'm going down a dead end road. But I want to say that what you're hearing tonight are stories of hope, are seeds of hope. And I want to finish by reading a very hopeful poem. It's written by African-American poet, the late Maya Angelou, who is a brilliant poet who went through some really, really hard things in life, was born in the 1920s, went through segregation when there was racial segregation in America, but triumphed. And she passed away in 2014 and left lots and lots of writing. But my favourite is the poem Still I Rise. And I just want to say to you tonight, as you listen to this, it doesn't matter who's written you off. It doesn't matter who's told you you'll end up nowhere. You have to believe that God's hand is on your life, and still, despite everything you go through, you will rise. This is what she writes. as an African American living in oppressive America. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns, with a certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness. But still, like air, I rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide, leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Wow. Beautiful. Thank you. Just wonder, Peter or Anna, I'm sure.
One of the joys of walking alongside Ash is you never quite know what's going to happen next and who you're going to meet on the journey. And Anna and I have kind of come down from Manchester really to kind of stand alongside in solidarity because we see the real significance of what is happening here and the investment, the risk, because it is always a risk, but actually just the sense of vision that God is calling this place to. And so we want to just stand alongside and say we want to be partners with you in this enterprise, and we love what's happening. Every now and then you meet somebody and you just kind of resonate with your vision, with their vision. You kind of feel like the kind of note that they're singing is the note of your heart, and you find yourself kind of joining in and harmonizing. And in meeting with Ash and in kind of talking with him, and actually the group of people who gather around him, a disparate and joy-filled group as they are, we just found that resonance. This is our song. These are our people. And part of that is that sense of a calling that is kind of beyond higher education. So on the one hand, we're, theological colleges. That's what we do. We work with a Russell Group University. Actually, our calling is to kind of give voice to people who sometimes don't find those spaces, to give opportunities for people who think that those chances have gone, and to see the vision that God calls us to, a vision for those on the margins, a vision that the oppressed will find justice. And in just talking with Ash, we kind of found things that we felt like there are journeys we can travel together. And so we have loved being part of shaping, in this case, MA pathways that say actually not only do we want to see people transformed at ground level, but actually we don't want those to be dead ends. We want there to be spaces for people to develop and to keep moving beyond the spaces where they thought they could go. And so it's been just such a joy to see people not only survive with that kind of mind-blowing study at that level, but to flourish. And it feels like the kind of the blue touch paper has been lit, and their kind of lives have just taken off. And that inspirational story inspires others around them. And so that has been a joy. So kind of teaching in areas of social justice, in areas of urban mission, Anna's working of areas of community development. And actually, the church needs to be at work here in areas of social entrepreneurship. So where is the church's voice? How do we prepare people to speak into these places? And so it is a joy and a real privilege for us to kind of stand alongside, to kind of hold each other up, because I think there's a kind of a mutual strength in partnership and in collaboration. And it's a joy just to be here with you folks, to see what God is doing. And we recognize that actually this is fragile. This is a risk. And you all know that actually there's too much here just for these few people. That they need people to hold up their arms. So we're kind of part of that team. And it will be lots of us who, for this to succeed, we have to hold up your arms. And we just pray that we're able to do that well. So thank you, brother, and thank you, folks.
Thank you, Peter. Well, thank you very much, Ash, and I really want to express my gratitude for that lecture and your thoughts and how it brought to life so much of what you're doing here with Seedbeds. Connections with Birmingham. I'm principal of a theological college, Moorlands College, which has its origins in Derbyshire but moved in 1970 to the south coast, to Dorset. But over the last 10 years or so, we've developed a mission across the UK, in Northern Ireland, in the southwest, and also with a learning hub in Birmingham, over in Selly Oak as well. But I've been at Moorlands just about 3 years, and one of my passions is that when we do theological education, it has to be grounded and rooted in local communities, and also in partnership as well. So we've been talking with Ash and Ange and Seedbeds about developing, particularly at further education level. We do quite a lot at that level around urban change makers, developing programs which might lead then into undergraduate education. And that's really been a creative and dynamic conversation so far. But it has a history for me. And this is where the Leslie Newbigin connection comes in. Because when I was an ordinand training for ministry in the United Reformed Church, Leslie's own denomination, my wife Mia and I, shortly after we were married, in the middle of our training, were put on placement at Wheeley Castle. Some of you will know Wheeley Castle. And we spent a whole year on internship there in a council estate that was actually bulldozed to the ground a few months after we left. And at the same time as we were there, Leslie Newbigin was ministering around Winsome Green, and I spent a number of days with him. And then, long story short, I went on to do various degrees and a PhD, a bit like Ash. And Leslie was kind enough just to mentor me through that process. And then when I wrote a book out of my study, he wrote the foreword to that book. And that book was published in November 1997. And John will correct me, but I think Leslie died in January 1998. So his foreword was, I think, the last thing published in his lifetime. And for somebody of his reputation and his commitment to take a young Christian leader just starting out on his ministry, public ministry, and to be kind enough to do that will live with me for the rest of my life. And what he wrote in that foreword and in the textbook that he used teaching us when I was at college, because he taught us mission as well, he stressed the importance of holding together personal conversion with social transformation. In the first chapter of The Open Secret, his great book on mission, but also in that foreword to my book, he said that if you lose the balance, the emphasis on each, then you're not doing the gospel. And here in the ministry of Seedbeds, we see individual people changed by Jesus, but we see society changed by Jesus, communities changed by Jesus as well. And Leslie, as some of you will know, had a passion for the individual, the local, but also the global. If you look at that poster, they're all there. They're all there. At Moorlands, our vision is to equip people who are passionate about Jesus to impact the church and the world. That's really important to us. The gospel's not just about individuals. It's not just about even the church. The church is God's means of doing mission for the whole world that he's made. Leslie embodied that. I believe seeing the ministry of Seedbeds here in Birmingham, it's like reflecting back on that period in the 80s where Leslie was so formative for me as a Christian. And yes, I did used to read to him when his sight was going, and that was an immense privilege because he'd never let you just read to him. He'd always ask you questions about what you were reading, and that was a bit daunting sometimes because I didn't know the answers always. But we believe that what you're doing, Ash, and the whole ministry of Seedbeds here is the gospel in its fullest dimension, and we want to commend you in that. And with God's grace, it's an early conversation we're having, but that will grow like the seed that you take your name from, and the gospel will be witnessed to richly as a result. So thank you for your lecture. Thank you very much for your fellowship and the food, which was brilliant as well. God bless you all.
Thank you. Teresa, would you like to... We'll just have Teresa, who's our chaplain here. She's one of the trustees as well, and Teresa's just been a delight and a gift to us. So Teresa's just going to close us out.
Hi, everybody. I just hope that you already feel blessed just being in this environment, and the food and the talks and all that we've just been listening to. So I hope you already feel well settled and blessed. So yes, I'd just like to bring a blessing from our loving Father God, and I'm going to start with Jesus's words actually, and we call the Beatitudes. Now, when you listen to them, maybe see which one of them you think you fit into, and just listen to God, what he's saying to you about where you're at. Okay, so I'm going to start with, this is found in Matthew 5, if you want to look it up later on. So, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So those are Jesus' own words. I think that's the best kind of blessing you can have. So I'll add some more, but before that, we'll just pray a short prayer. And other words, it's all mixed up, but stay with me. In Christ, we live and move and have our being. So, Father God, thank you for sacrificing your Son for us. Jesus, thank you for paying the price for our sins. Holy Spirit, come and break into each of our lives. Help us to recognize our weaknesses and acknowledge that you are strong, that we can do all things through Christ. So the blessing. May the peace of the Lord Christ go with you, wherever he may send you. May he guide you through the wilderness, protect you through the storm. May he bring you home rejoicing at the wonders he has shown you. May he bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors. The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and give you peace.
Amen.
Thank you, friends. So that's the end of our formal bit, but we've got some cake. Special cake from Mark that he's handmade for us up in the dining hall. Good on you, Mark. If you are interested in supporting our Seedbeds venture, there are some pamphlets at the back there. We'd love your support. I know many of you are already supporting us and praying for us and working with us in all kinds of ways, students with us. But if you want some more information, that is there, and seedbeds.org is the website. Dave, is there anything else I'm missing? Anybody? Any more?
Might be helpful if you, when you are going up to get your cake, if you're able to take your chair with you. That will just mean that we don't have to, one or two people don't have to do it all by themselves later. So that would be really helpful if you can. Thank you.
So thank you everybody for coming. We're so grateful. Blessings on you. Thank you.